This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on any podcasting platform or their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. And the Eagles offseason is now in full swing. The Eagles, do they have a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball? We're going to take a look at some offense today with Adam Caplan and the questions and decisions they're going to have to make on that side of the ball. And today's Inside the Birds show, they focused on that Eagles roster. We're going to look on the offensive side of the ball. Adam Caplan, happy hour Friday to you, sir.
Yeah, Mike, good to be with you. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, yeah, today's show, which is, on any platform, whether it's YouTube, by the way, or YouTube channel, or podcasting platform, we did. And the thing is, the reason why we do this, we do a deep dive. You start getting an idea of where the issues are. And we're going to do defense on Monday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. That's when our next show drops. You start to see that there are real depth issues. Sure, free agency is for several months, but it just tells you to start free agency on March the 13th. They've got some major challenges here in terms of depth. What happens if somebody gets hurt? And that's the problem. A lot of expiring contracts. We thought they had good depth at receiver. Well, it wasn't really tested because Sirianni and his scheme didn't really use three receivers. But I think things are going to change here with Kellen Moore.
Yeah, that's one of the big things everybody seemingly is waiting to see. What is different about this offense next year with Kellen Moore kind of running it, calling the plays, and who does it benefit, right? Who kind of makes out more in this change from the old offense to the new offense? Which guys have some bigger roles than they did maybe in last year's offense? That kind of stuff is stuff we'll probably find out during training camp a little bit more.
Well, although I could tell you, I did talk to Moore last summer at Chargers camp. We had a nice talk for 5 minutes. And, I went by what I knew about his scheme from talking to people who worked with him before. And it really started, he said his belief system started at Boise and the system that he played, which was the pure spread. And he took what he learned from his time with Mike McCarthy and before that, Jason Garrett, which is more of the Garrett system is really from North Turner, and that's more heavy 12 personnel and just some power sets. And then with Mike McCarthy, the West Coast offense, he included those principles. But everything he starts with spread. That's where he got it out of. He's as one coaching source who we're trying to get on our show, who's known Kellen for a long time. He's the guy's actually out of work. We're trying to get him on next week. Paul Gunther, by the way, we were going to have on, but Paul's going back to work. The former Raiders D coordinator, he's going to go back to work with Mike Zimmer with the Cowboys. So that's scratchy. We're going to have him on our show. So, but anyway, we know the Kellen Moore offense like the back of our hand based on people we spoke with and talking to Kellen. So it's a high pressure offense that is spread in its base, and the backs will catch the football. You saw Tony Pollard was terrific in it 2 years ago. I don't know what happened to Pollard this season with Dallas, although the passing game was great. But I do. So to answer your question, Mike, the sport, I do believe it does favor Jalen Hurts. He's going to have to check the ball down more. I know something that we're looking into because we know he doesn't like to. By the way, Carson Wentz didn't like to do it either. But this is one thing that I thought was unacceptable last season, the lack of use of the running backs. How do you trade for DeAndre Swift, who's dynamic in the pass game, and not get him the ball in there? Like they did early in the season, like they started off doing it, then they stopped.
All right, well, let's look at that because you look at this roster. Hurts is here. Mariota is gone. Luckily, they're going to have to go with Tanner McKee as the main backup to try to save some money at the backup quarterback position or find another veteran guy. But then the running back spot, the only guy they really have, you got Kenny Gainwell. Everybody else is either a free agent or free to move on. Boston Scott gone. Obviously, Swift is a free agent. Gainwell and a gentleman named Lou Nichols.
Yeah, Lou Nichols was with he was a 7th-round pick, I believe, of the Packers last year. And he's a power back, by the way. But, yeah, they don't have anyone else under contract. But let me get back to quarterback. I strongly suspect they're going to bring a veteran in to either just hand them the number 2 job or compete against McKee. Look, McKee did not have a great training camp. It was his preseason where it was like, wow, what an arm. Big kid doesn't move all that well. What's interesting is Mike, with Hurts, obviously he's very mobile, and this other guy is not. So what kind, will you adjust your play calling? How much will Hurts run the football? That we don't know, because Dak didn't have a lot designed for him with the run game under Moore. It was more scrambles. And that's really what Dak has been in recent years. He's more scrambles, not a lot of design runs. So we don't know. That's a mystery on how they're going to coach him in terms of, with Hurts, it's going to be mostly a drop back system, which has really been Moore's offense anyway. It wasn't like they were asking Justin Herbert to run the ball much. Unfortunately, Herbert got hurt to end the season. He missed the final, 4 or 5 games. But so that's quarterback and running back. Yeah. So Kenny Gainwell, we know we outlined this after Gainwell was drafted. We had heard very strongly that Sirianni pushed for him. He wanted him in a big way, and he got him. And he definitely has a good role, but they need juice in that backfield. Gainwell's not as explosive as we thought he was at Memphis, and has not been quite as versatile. Now, is that because they don't call the pass plays? Don't know. That's something we're going to learn a lot. We got fooled by what we saw in OTAs and training camp, because it was crazy how much Swift was used there. Then he wasn't used much after week 4 or week 5 in the pass game. So that is the mystery. But the other thing is they're going to have to add at least 2 running backs, maybe 3. We'll see. Definitely 2, because you have to go into training camp with 5. 4 is really challenging. Most teams don't do that. So they've got a lot of work to do. And I know they have some interest in bringing back Swift, but it's cost effectiveness, and they never. I don't believe they made an offer, by the way, to bring back Miles Sanders, and probably thankfully he got $6 million a year. And by the way, he's got a significant amount of fully guaranteed money due in his Panthers contract. Good luck to the Panthers.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the market for running backs is this year. I mean, You got some high profile, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
You got some big name running backs on the market. To see what that ends up doing there.
Yep.
What about? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I don't know that Swift is not in Jacobs' area. Now, Barkley did not have a good year. He's got a big injury history. He's more talented. Barkley's contract, wherever he goes, is going to be fascinating because of his injury history.
Let's look at the wide receivers, because we all know Smith and Brown. And then what is left after that? There's a bunch of, vagabonds, cast-offs, and guys you never heard of before.
Yeah, and that's really it. So right now they only have 2 receivers. I'm not counting Covey, who barely played receiver. As you know, he's a slot, and he got a couple reps last year. So they don't have a 3, 4, 5 right now. I know it's early. And as I said on today's show, it was such an egregious error to not use Zacchaeus as a third receiver. This is something I know Kellen Moore sure as heck would, whoever it is, because he's done that in the past. The third receiver gets the football. So that, to me, they'd be making a mistake by not looking to bring back Zacchaeus. It wasn't his fault. It's just that Sirianni and his scheme and the play calling was bad. They just didn't. They did not diversify their scheme or their personnel, and that's something that will definitely change with Kellen Moore, who is going to have full autonomy. We're told pretty strongly. He could do what he needs to do. Nick will have some input, but he can't overrule him unless it's Mike, because he's the head coach. He goes, I don't like that play call. And Nick has done that before, and all head coaches can do that. But in terms of game planning, it's going to be Kellen Moore's show. So I'm really looking forward to see what they do for their 3rd and 4th receivers. And the Watkins kid is really interesting, by the way, who was with Cleveland. But overall, you're right, Mike. They don't have anyone with any experience, and that's the thing. Is we did this deep dive into the roster. The lack of experience for their backups. Well, Mike, they just don't have anyone under contract. They just very few guys who've ever done thing in the NFL do the Eagles have as backups right now.
Yeah, and then the other spot is tight end. I mean, obviously last year you had Goddard, and then when he got hurt, there was a big drop-off at that spot.
Yep.
Do they go back with the same group of guys there? Is that another area of this Eagles offseason that they need to try to find a better option?
Yeah, well, Calcaterra's their 3. Jack Stoll, who's their 2. The unquestioned 2 is a restricted free agent. As I said on today's show, though there's nothing official, my sense is he's more likely not to get tendered or to get tendered. It's probably not, because if they even use a low tender on him, it's a lot of money to be a backup tight end. As much as they like him and they don't want to lose him, obviously if they don't tender him, he's free to go anywhere, and that's the risk that they run. But they know his agent very well. They've done a lot of business with him. We'll see what happens. But overall, Mike, yeah, that's another position. And I threw this out last week. Would it surprise anyone if the Eagles used a pick within the first 3 rounds for a tight end?
Yeah, I mean, this is where they took Goddard in the draft when they had Zach Ertz. Was at the same time. Goddard was drafted in the second round, and Ertz was 29 years old. Well, that's where Goddard is now. So
exactly.
They have 2 second-round picks there. The offensive line is very interesting and difficult to kind of put together here. But Mailata's signed, Lane Johnson signed. Behind those two at tackle, I guess you're hoping that Lane plays, another 1 or 2 years at least. You got Mailata. So the tackle spot, interesting. The interior is weird because you don't know what's going to happen with Kelsey, and then if he leaves, then that kind of changes the guard spot. And then you got to think about extending Dickerson.
Yeah, and Dickerson, as we said, I mean, it could be both or it could just be one. Either he or Devontae Smith gets re-signed or extended. But, yeah, so, look, Dickerson's going to be here a long time. He's not going anywhere. He's been a good story development. Lane Johnson, my understanding is he should play at least this season and through 25, then they'll see. And by the way, by structure, even if he is feeling great, he can't play on this deal for 27. It would have to be restructured, I'm told, by the language. But he's feeling good. He's in a good place right now off the field, with everything he's dealt with, as we know, and Lane's doing great. Mailata's signed through 25. I could see him being extended after this season, by the way. I think that certainly could be the case. But here, Fred Johnson's going to be their top. Right now, with Jack Driscoll unsigned, Mike, Fred Johnson is their top backup tackle. That's it right now. Jack Driscoll. See, I don't see him finding a starting job, so he certainly could be back. But right now, Mike, they don't really have that guy who they know could be the long-term backup. The swing tackle right now is Fred Johnson. And look, it's Tyler Steen. I mean, right now, if Juergens is the center, which obviously would be the plan if Kelsey does carry through the retirement, is Tyler Steen ready to start? I don't know that, Mike.
Was he a third-round pick last year, Steen?
Yeah, now they drafted, I can tell you this for a fact, they absolutely 100% drafted him to be the starter, the long-term starter inside. But he's so new to it. As we said to start training camp, everyone was penciling Steen in. We said nope, that Juergens was ahead on technique. Steen was way behind. Now, I didn't think he would be that far behind, Mike. That kind of surprised me. And look, Stoutland signed off on this. This is what Stout wanted. And we all believe in Stout. Stout's a stud, but Steen was not ready. And I don't know that he's going to be ready this year. Well, now, I hope they don't hand it to him. I think that would be a mistake to hand that starting right guard job to Steen. I think that they may do that, but I would not agree with that right now.
Well, and I would say one thing that seems obvious here is that while the offense, like you see, has pieces in place, this thing can switch in a hurry. There's a lot of contract situations, and if Kelsey moves on, you've got a lot of potential changes within the next year.
It does, and the future, though, for the next 3 to 5 years is Mailata. It is Dickerson. It is Juergens. That's 100% the case. We don't know about Steen. And then, now, I'll throw this before we get out of here. I know fans don't want to hear this because it's boring. I get it. And John Lane's going to play at least 2 more years, barring something unforeseen. But at what point with Lane's injury history do they get that guy in the first couple rounds? It doesn't have to be round 1, but what if they do it in round 2? Would you have a problem with it? I would not. Round 1, it's a little bit early, but the Eagles are so good at looking ahead. Usually, I don't see it in this year because they know that Lane wants to play a little bit longer. But I could certainly see Lane's replacement in the second round. That would not surprise me.
Adam Caplan, don't forget to check out the Inside the Birds podcast. They take a deep dive on the offensive roster and more. And, of course, right here on Football at 4. As we get into the offseason now, of course, we're going to take a look at more Eagles, NFL, draft, free agency. We got a ton for you here on Football at 4, so keep it locked every day, 4 o'clock right here on the Sports Bash, plus the Inside the Birds podcast with Adam Caplan. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
And Adam Caplan, of course. Jeff Mosher is back on Monday.